Earlier today, during the incredible, miraculous, fantastic comeback of Roger Federer in the third round of the Australian Open against Aussie John the Milkman Millman, who always delivers. Somewhere towards the end of that match, before the miraculous comeback part, when it looked like Roger may lose, ESPN2 flashed a graphic on the screen that read, Serena Williams and Roger Federer have never, in history, both lost on the same day of a major. And then below that in fine print, it said Serena Williams lost in the third round of the Australian Open earlier today. But thankfully for Federer and his glorious fans around the world, that was not the little bit of history that happened on that day. No, Roger Federer did not make history by losing on the same day as Serena for the first time. He made history by winning a 10-point tiebreak in the fifth set of a major for the first time. But it was after that match, after Serena's loss, Federer's win, after their press conferences, I was struck by the contrast between Roger and Serena and why they are still playing. To me, it is not as clear as to why is Serena at this age still out there trying to win majors. It's not as clear there for me as it is with why Roger is still trying to do it at this age, 38. You know, a lot of people might not realize that Serena and Roger, they are pretty much the same age. I think they're a couple of weeks apart in age. And if I go all the way back to when I first started watching tennis, when Roger used this red 90-inch, ridiculously small Wilson Encode racket, and him and Serena were number one in the world and winning everything. They were dominating. To me, their stories were quite similar. She was the woman's version. He was the men's version. They had the same mission, the same goals, and they were both winning everything and playing driven by their love of the game. They love tennis. That's what they do. No more complicated than that. And today, despite every excuse that media coverage gives Roger Federer, every excuse they afford him to say, well, I'm still playing because I just can't stand to have Novak and Rafa take my records, right? Roger could have said something like, I turned into take my Lucky Charms at the end of that. Roger could say something like that, but no, what Roger says is very clear. I'm playing because I love the game. And if I set the records, if I win more majors, that's great. So be it. But as long as I'm healthy and happy out here, I'm going to keep playing because I love tennis. And I don't doubt that Serena loves tennis as well, but with her, it's a little different because you can't read anything. Go ahead, Google search Serena Williams right now. You can't read any story about Serena without some kind of a mention of Margaret Court. Media coverage of Serena, unfortunately for us tennis fans and for Serena herself, has kind of hijacked her legacy. They've hijacked the story. It's all about Margaret Court. It's no longer the fun-loving girl who, against all odds, came from Compton and took over the sport of tennis. Now it's more, I am a mother, I have a daughter, I'm fighting for the rights of women and mothers around the world. And I'm the only person who can defeat the evil, no good, very, very bad old woman from Australia, Margaret Court. Now, the way media coverage looks at Margaret Court and Serena, I would excuse you if you were new to the sport and you thought Margaret Court was an active player right now. I would understand if you went to the Australian Open website and looked at the 2020 draw and said, oh, where's Margaret Court? I don't see her in the draw. I wonder if she lost early. Maybe she lost in qualifying. I would get it because it seems like Margaret Court is still here the way they talk about the story of Serena. And I really think this is unfortunate for Serena because it's not Serena's job to beat the ghost of Margaret Court. Us tennis people, unlike most of the people in media who cover Serena today, most of them are not tennis people. They don't know the great history of the sport. But most of us tennis people who love this game, we know that Serena is the greatest. And we know that she doesn't have to beat the Margaret Court record because we understand that record was set freaking 50 years ago when half of her majors came at the Australian Open and all the top players pretty much skipped the Australian Open because back then it wasn't a major tournament like it is today. It wasn't important. Tennis people get it. But to me, if Naomi Osaka says she felt so much pressure as defending champion, pressure from the media, hyping her up before she went into her match as defending champion against Coco Gauff and Naomi lost, if that was a weight on Naomi's shoulders, I have to wonder, how is Serena dealing with the weight of all this media news coverage talking about her duty and her responsibility, her mission to defeat Margaret Court? I really hope that Serena will forget about Margaret Court. Because when you find yourself in a difficult moment, facing adversity, I don't know, say like you're in a tiebreak at a major and you're down 8-4. Let's say that, hypothetical situation. If you find yourself in that moment and you feel you're doubting yourself. You feel hopeless. I don't think if you asked Roger, he's going to say, well, I was down 8-4, and then I said to myself, I've got to stop Rafa and Novak. I don't think that's what it was. I think most likely Roger drew upon his love for the game, drew upon the foundation of his love from his family. Just look at the way Mirka was having a freaking heart attack throughout that entire match in the crowd, just like the way all the Federer fans around the world felt the same exact way, I'm sure. Look at the way Roger and Mirka, to put it on the screen, they had a nice embrace in the player tunnel right after the match. I'm sure Federer drew his strength from something like that. And again, I don't doubt that Serena loves the game still, but she's got to get her mind off of this Margaret Court nonsense. Plenty of people have plenty of reason to not like Margaret Court. It is not Serena's responsibility to fix that or to fix the world or to live up to the expectations of people and from media outlets around the world that don't know anything about tennis. Serena, forget them. Forget Margaret Court. She's a ghost of tennis past. Focus on your love for the game. Take a page out of the GOAT playbook of Roger, Rafa, and Novak. Focus on the love of the game. Do it for that nerdy guy that invented Reddit that you married. Apparently, that guy is crazy about Serena. He is her number one fan. Just look at him in the player box. And do it for your lovely daughter, who will hopefully grow up one day and say, my mother never, ever gave up. She never quit when she wanted to prove to herself, not to anyone else, but to herself, that she still had it, she still could win a major after giving birth to her first child. Today on Coffee Break Tennis. Now that the serious stuff is over, we can do the full Benoit pair. Today on Coffee Break Tennis, we will take a look at the men's draw and talk about where things stand. Obviously, we lost a lot of top names, a lot of favorites, a lot of high rankings have disappeared. We'll catch you up on all of that. We will discuss Roger Federer's match with John Millman and talk about how it affects his chances to win the entire tournament. We'll break down the matches that are coming next. And heck, maybe we'll even talk a little bit more women's tennis since we just did more time on women's tennis in the intro of the show than we ever have before. Welcome to Coffee Break Tennis, the fastest growing tennis talk show in the world, the place where you can hear opinions from a real life tennis person who actually likes the game and has watched it for quite some time, maybe knows what he's talking about, instead of what you typically hear from all those fakers over at The Guardian and The Express and all kinds of places. Let's not single anybody out, please. Welcome to the show. Today, I'm very fired up. I'm very emotional. One, I feel really bad for Serena. Obviously, if you can't tell, I feel bad for a lot of stuff that's happened to her. And I had a heart attack watching the Roger Federer match. So now that I have another chance at life, as Novak Djokovic famously said, when he was growing up, talk about overcoming adversity coming up into the tennis world. When Djokovic and Serbian players were training in Serbia and having bombs dropped over them, and they had to escape their makeshift tennis pool converted into a tennis court and hide out in a bomb shelter, Novak Djokovic famously said years later that after going through that, it made him appreciate the value of life and thankful to be where he is and really just go for it, go for his dreams. So after having my near-death experience, having a heart attack watching Roger Federer's match today with Millman, I gotta say I have a new appreciation of life. I really do. So put the draw on the screen. Let's just look ahead while we're here. Tsitsipas is out. Milos Raonic, all of his rage, all of his anger of being the guy who almost won Wimbledon only 4 years ago, he was the next gen guy. He was the Medvedev not that long ago. For the last few years, all of the rage that Milos Raonic has felt, he took it out on the latest version of himself, next gen super favorite, Stefanos Tsitsipas. How sad is it for my draw, though? Tsitsipas was supposed to beat Djokovic in the quarterfinals. Now he is gone. Raonic will play. The other guy people thought maybe could beat Djokovic, Roberto Bautista Agut. Marin Cilic took him out, and now Raonic and Marin Cilic. That is the fourth round that no one expected. That will get the winner of little Diego Schwartzman, who was awesome, Shorty D, in his beatdown over Lajovic. I got to watch that match last night. Watched a lot of that, a little bit of Serena, then I went to bed, and then I woke up to a nightmare scenario where Roger was serving 5-6 down a set in the second, hoping to get to a tiebreak. Of course, my first thought was, oh my God, if Roger gets broken, he's going to be down 2 sets of love. That's how I woke up this morning. Diego Schwartzman, he was playing amazing against Lajovic, and then he started hitting a lot of unforced errors, and things started falling apart for him, but he He got a little lucky with a call, I should say. He wins in a tiebreak, but Lajovic kind of won the tiebreak in the third set because they call it out as Diego Schwartzman hits his two-handed return. You know, he's diving. The return is nowhere near in, and the call out on the serve pretty much comes at the same exact moment Diego Schwartzman makes contact with the ball. So the umpire said, well, that was a hindrance to Diego Schwartzman's ability to return the serve. And Lajovic really had a strong case to say, no, that should be my point. Credit to Lajovic, he kind of let it go. Maybe he shouldn't have. But he had a strong case to say, that should be my point. That was an unreturned service winner. And that call of out had nothing to do with Schwartzman, little Shorty D, at his full reach, full stretch, unable to return my great flat bomb out wide. So after that happened, Shorty D should have lost that third set. He ends up winning that tiebreak. So tough break for Lajovic. And a tough break for Novak Djokovic, who has to play Shorty D next in the round of 16. Here's your lineup in the bottom of the draw. Tennis Sandgren, enter the Sandman, versus Fabio Fognini. Fabio Fognini, that's one match that's kind of surprising. Federer versus Fucsovics. And who was this supposed to be? Was this supposed to be the dreaded fourth round repeat of last year where Federer loses to a next-gen superstar? El Chapo, the baby. Well, it's not Big Baby Chapo. It's Marty Fucsovics, who's quite a handsome fella. You got to put it out there. You got to acknowledge it. So that's your lineup. I'm fully expecting to see Fognini and Federer. Not really, though, actually. After Sandgren just took out Sam Querrey, who was playing pretty well before he ran into the buzzsaw of Tennis Sandman Sandgren, I wouldn't be surprised to, like I said in my draw show, the one thing it looks like I might still get right, I would not be surprised to see a surprise quarterfinal appearance from someone no one would expect, the Sandman Sandgren and Roger Federer. Feel like Raonic has a little destiny on his side, but Cilic is in a similar place. Cilic has fallen from grace. He almost won this tournament almost 2 years ago, losing in the final to Federer, which was, ironically, that was the last time Federer won a 5-set match anywhere. Last year, Federer did not win any 5-set matches. Remember, he lost a big one at Wimbledon to Djokovic. So last time Federer won a 5-set, it was over Cilic in the final here at the Australian Open 2 years ago. Now Federer does it again over John Millman. A little bit of a surprise. And what do you know? Marin Cilic is in the mix. Maybe we will get Djokovic Cilic. I expect Djokovic to be Schwartzman, but I will say this. Schwartzman could be a little tough. I think Lajovic would have been easier. There's a little less pressure to play your friends and you know their game very well. It's not Lajovic. It's not that guy. It's Shorty D, the little engine that could, Diego Schwartzman. And I think Novak Djokovic, if you have similar conditions like what we saw with Roger in this Millman match, if the ball's going really slow, if it's a night match with Shorty D and Djokovic, I could see a little trouble for Djokovic. He could have a little trouble putting Shorty D away because Schwartzman looks really good. He's playing really well, and of course, he defends great. And I mean, we saw what happened with someone who defends great, who also can come up with the goods and apply pressure when they want to. Because should we talk about Federer Millman yet? Because talk about getting to everything, being a treble to hit through in slow conditions, and then constantly coming up with goods to apply pressure. I'm shocked how well Millman played. I mean, Millman was beating Roger in pretty much everything. You think forehand to forehand cross-court rally, Roger's going to have an edge every time, but Millman looked better cross-court forehand to forehand. He looked better cross-court backhand to backhand. He was, most of the match, Millman was hitting the ball harder than Federer. It really looked like Federer was going to be the one to drop the ball short and then get sent sprinting out to the corner on the run from a very aggressive shot from Millman. Very weird. But you know what? Let's look at the other page first. Top part of the draw. Pablo Carreño Busta will play Rafa Nadal. Talk about playing a countryman from the team you just spent all this time with at Davis Cup and ATP Cup for Rafa. I think Rafa will feel very comfortable with PCB, but a slight caveat. If it's slow conditions in a night match like what we saw of Roger and Millman, anything's possible with Rafa and Novak and Roger. It could happen anytime if you're playing at midnight and it's like cold. It's borderline, it's very slow. Kyrgios and Khachanov, on the other hand, that's what's preventing us from getting Rafa versus Kyrgios in the fourth round. I think we will get it still. I still think Kyrgios has a good chance to beat Rafa. But Khachanov and Kyrgios, Khachanov has been through a lot. He's had to play a lot of sets already. Kachanov never really found his groove at ATP Cup. Wherever he went next after that, he lost his first match up, I believe, in Adelaide or New Zealand, something like that. Anyways, Kachanov not looking strong enough to me to beat this new improved Nick, who's very, very focused. I talked about in the Coffee Break Tennis podcast last night that Chris Fowler was commentating on ESPN saying, I don't fully trust Nick, okay? This is a nice sign, but I'm not buying it quite yet, and I don't blame him. Patrick McEnroe didn't blame him. He said, well, this is a good sign from Nick, but I don't blame you, Chris. You're probably taking the right approach, Chris Fowler, for still having your doubts about Nick Kyrgios. But all the signs are there. He's done it the right way. Gilles Simon, kind of like Millman, except not bringing the kind of offense that Millman brought last night, not anything close to it, but still making Nick play tons of balls. And Nick showed the patience, just like we saw Federer in the end of the match show a lot of patience to break back and to keep holding serve and ultimately win in that fifth set tiebreak. You gotta have nerves of steel, and you gotta know when is the right time to go for your shot if you want to pull off wins in those kind of conditions against players who are great defenders who don't miss very much. Kyrgios did that against Gilles Simon. Why on earth would he lose to Kachanov, who's going to have a lot of the same problems Nick would run into and is going to have trouble hitting through slower conditions? I think Nick has more weapons overall than Kachanov. Kachanov, to me, is mostly just a massive forehand and then some other stuff that's pretty good, whereas Nick can do a lot of things with every shot. He has a lot of ways to hurt you. I like Nick to come through there. I like Nadal, Nick Kyrgios, fourth round. I still think Nick Kyrgios can win that match. Monfils and Gulbis, talk about another matchup we might not have expected. Taylor Fritz, I guess Kevin Anderson just wasn't fit enough after having to take off half a year last season to come back and win 2 5-setters in a row. So Taylor Fritz gets that match. That's a surprise. What will happen with Dominic Thiem? No idea. That match with Dominic Thiem and Alex Bolt was freaking crazy. Dominic Thiem was all over the place. Dominic Thiem spent a lot of time playing returns of serve from the wall like he would on a clay court. And Taylor Fritz has got quite a serve. I don't know if that's a good way to play Taylor Fritz. So it'll be very interesting to see what Dominic Thiem does there. I ultimately expect Dominic Thiem to come through. I kind of want to pick the librarian Ernest Gulbis to come through Monfils. A little bit of a man of destiny right now. Medvedev and Popeye, the Australian, John Isner and Wawrinka. I don't know about Wawrinka. He's already played a lot of tennis, and we know that he's had issues with the knees the last few years. So I kind of want to go with Isner, who, amazingly, Isner came through his last match in straight sets, so Isner should feel fresher than normal. I think he can get through, stand the man. Expect Isner, Medvedev. Medvedev should win that match, but you never know. Stranger things have happened. With Tsitsipas out, Dominic Thiem and Medvedev, those are your next-gen faces. If anyone's going to break the trend and stop the big three, those are the only ones that anyone would ever guess had a chance to do it. Oh, Sasha Zverev is still around. Rublev, I think, will beat David Goffin, but who knows? David Goffin is he's a veteran of the sport, and slow conditions, maybe Rublev will struggle. Depends where they're at, what time of day, what is the weather like. For Dasko and Sasha Zverev, not very impressed with Sasha Zverev's last match, even though he got through in straight sets. Feel like he should have won that match easier than he did. I haven't seen much of Verdasco this year, so I don't know what to expect there. Toss-up, if I had to pick anybody, I'd put my money on Verdasco and not on Sasha Zverev. Back to Roger and Millman. All right, let's take a listen. I think Roger did an excellent job explaining the challenges of the match and what John Millman did so well.
Roger, I was just wondering if you can pinpoint exactly what it is in his game that makes him such a tough matchup for you. Whether it's his game or is it the attitude, the whole mentality he brings?
No,
what it is?
Attitude. Man, yeah, you need to bring that, but like if a guy's jumping up and down on the other side, it's not going to beat me. You know, I just think he's just so tough from the baseline. You know, he's got sort of good speed on the backhand, on the forehand. The way he hits it makes it for me unsure if I should pull the trigger or I shouldn't, or is it there to be hit or not? And every time I get a ball, I'm in two ways because I have the option to do that with my game, but and then he covers the court very well, you know, because he hits it hard enough. Maybe it's harder for me to find angle, And I think the biggest problem for me was just I wasn't able to get enough, because I was not returning poorly per se, I was just not getting into those neutral rallies, finding the ways to unlock him. And that's his credit. He's a great player, and like you said, he's got great attitude, and that's why I mumbled something to him at the net, just saying I have so much respect for you, and it's such a pity, I'm so sorry, but well played and all that stuff. But because I really feel that way for John.
Also, Roger talked about Millman's serve. This was very interesting to me as well. And notice how careful Roger is to not insult the serve of John Millman.
He's not known to be the best server, He's got a good serve, but it's not like the tall guys, coming in super fast and everything. But he was doing such a nice job of not making a lot of mistakes. I was struggling in the forehand cross courts, backhand cross courts. He was sort of dominating both sides. So I think for me it was just a matter of holding my own serve, figure out a way and give myself time and chances. So it was big to win that second set, I thought, and then also stretch the lead in that third set. But I never really felt comfortable. I thought John did a great job of keeping me on my back foot, that I couldn't always step in until the last shot. I went for it. He picked the wrong side.
So to me, John Millman had the best serving day of his life, or at least one of them. I'm sure he's had a better day at some point, but I don't know. 5 sets with Roger Federer in front of this big of a crowd, that's got to be Millman's best day, and not just with the serve. Millman, we expected him to be a retriever and get every ball back. And one of the things I said going in the podcast last night that I did, one of the things I talked about was how the game changer last time Federer lost to Millman at the U.S. Open was it was so hot and so humid, which means you have slow conditions, but you also have like this, you're being cooked effect. And Roger, who's so fit, he proved it towards the end of that match tonight. All the commentators were saying, I'm a little worried about the fatigue that is now setting in to Roger Federer. Talk about being super fit. Federer proved that he still has it. He still has the ability to win no matter what from any situation after playing for 4 hours long. It's pretty incredible that he was able to do that. Anyways, but in that extreme heat and humidity and losing so many fluids, Millman's fitness was superior. Federer couldn't hang with Millman in those kind of conditions and with the slow conditions that they were playing in on top of that. That's why I went into this match saying Federer is going to have plenty of time. It's not going to be like he's up against a ticking time bomb, knowing that he's pretty much out of gas and he has to force the issue right now and find ways to hit the ball through Millman right away. It's do or die time. I felt like in this match, the weather, yes, there would be some humidity and slow conditions because it's colder, but it's cold, so you don't feel like you're being cooked alive in the stadium, and you feel like you have time to come back if things are not working well. Well, things were certainly not working well for Roger Federer as early as the first set. Roger Federer never really found his stride. In fact, this was someone asked Federer about all the unforced errors he had, and I love this answer from the press conference. Take a listen.
You had 48 unforced errors on your forehand tonight, and I'm curious how much of that was John covering the court well and you feeling like you had to go for too much, or how much was just not feeling that side as much today?
I mean, honestly, nothing against the statistics people, but over a 4-hour match you're going to hit unforced errors. And what is an unforced error is when it comes at 120 k's an hour or 135 or you're semi on the stretch. So for me, he pushed me, to go for more. You know me, I'm not going to hold back and just rally all the time. I will always try to make plays, and for that I will miss some. Of course, sometimes I wish I could have maybe hit a few more winners instead of unforced errors, but shows how slow the courts can be as well. How many rallies get created, how he didn't serve and volley once, I serve and volleyed maybe 10 times, 5 times. I mean, it's...
when is it an unforced error? Who decides what's an unforced error? What does the opponent do to you? What kind of opponent do you have? What are the conditions like? These things change everything. And I have to be consistent. I've been saying if you're getting stuck in 5-set matches early, you're in big trouble. But I feel a little different. I know some people out there are going to say, Matt, it's just because you're biased and you love Federer. But I feel like this match was pretty important. One, the fact that Federer didn't win a single 5-setter last year at all. So I had forgotten about that. Knowing that now, thinking about that now, pretty good for Roger to do it. Also good that it didn't happen right away in the first or second round. It happened in the third round against someone who, for once, another great thing Federer said, take a listen from the on-court interview.
But tonight, ultimately it felt like it was a pretty split crowd here in the room. How was that for you?
I won't take it personal. Don't worry about it. It's nice. He deserves all the support. Honestly, he's such a great fighter, great story for the game. And you've given me more than you had to.
I don't hold it against you if you cheered against me for the hometown favorite for the Australian John Millman. So one, Federer had a situation like that where the crowd was kind of a little against him. At least they were very vocal for his opponent. Not a typical Federer crowd anywhere in the world. He overcame that. He overcame a real challenge with the conditions. He was playing one of the worst people to play in these conditions. And I saw somebody tweet something like Millman choked. That is highly inaccurate. Millman played such a high level. I think there's a strong case. If I'm going to say Roberto Bautista Agut is a good warm-up for playing Djokovic because they kind of play similar, Millman really brought like a Joker-like level in all aspects. His defense was impenetrable. Roger could not hit a ball through Millman for most of the match. And you heard Roger in the press conference talk about how it was very difficult to decide when to go for the right shot. When do you really have an opportunity to hurt Millman? When are you just taking on unnecessary risks? And that's why Roger hit a ton of unforced errors, because it's really tricky to figure out when to go for it and when to wait and when you're in danger and when you're not in danger. And that's kind of what it's like to play Novak Djokovic. The guy gets to everything, and the guy has the depth of shot, the weight of shot to put massive pressure on you. Like Federer said, Millman, he's not one of the tall guys. Same thing with Djokovic. They don't have the biggest serves in the world, but Djokovic, he will hit good serves in good spots and put a lot of pressure on you for when it's a good serving day for Djokovic. And Millman had one of the best serving days I have ever seen from him. Again, to me, this was like the perfect kind of preparation for Roger to, if you're going to play Novak Djokovic, you're going to face something like this, if not maybe even better than what Millman threw at Roger Federer. Who knows if Novak will be able to consistently bring that same level of tennis or how much better he could be. But either way, Roger Federer definitely got a taste of what Novak Djokovic is all about. This was an excellent prep, and it comes in the third round. Yes, Marti Fucsovics, he's kind of a similar player, but I don't think he can bring as much firepower as what Millman brought, and Millman was really going for it on every shot. I can't say it enough how amazing it is that Millman was playing so aggressive for him and so consistent. He was just as consistent as ever. His defense was as good as ever, but he brought way more offense than what we're used to seeing from John Millman. It was really an incredible effort from John Millman, and even more incredible to me that Federer found a way to win it somehow. It really is. So I can't say that enough. Perfect prep for Roger. Marti Fucsovics will be another kind of challenging, but this is going to be more like going down to Gilles Simon rather than doing Millman all over again. I feel like Roger should be able to get through that easier, recoup some energy. Who does Roger have again? Tennis Sandgren. It's going to be a replay of 2017 where Federer is going to get Tennis Sandgren or maybe Fognini. I don't know. With Fognini, you never know. That could be very tricky. Hopefully it's Tennis Sandgren for Roger Federer's sake. But if Roger can have an easy quarterfinal win over either one of them and get through Fucsovics in anything, he can't have another 5 set. If Federer goes 4 hours with Fucsovics, now I'm going to start saying, okay, that's too much. Federer's chances are really hurt. He can't be expending this much energy before Joker. But if he can get through his next couple matches easily and meet Joker in the semis, he can definitely draw upon this experience with John, the Milkman, Millman, who always delivers the milk in a strong tennis performance. Definitely can draw on that and use it against Novak Djokovic. All right, last thing I want to talk about today, because I could go on forever, and I just want to, this is a big day. I want to get this show done. And we saw so many names out. Tsitsipas losing, kind of shocking the way that happened. Roberto Bautista Agut losing, who we thought was somebody who could actually do something here at the tournament. The way he's lost now, it's all amazing and overwhelming. Federer almost losing. There's really like no seeds. All these other favorites are pretty much gone. It's amazing we didn't lose Dominic Thiem. If Alex Bolt hadn't completely run out of gas, who knows what would have happened to Thiem. But I want to read this comment from Steven Lilac, because this one really stuck out to me today, especially when I'm reflecting on Roger, Rafa, and Novak and Serena and where their careers have been and where they are today and their motivation and all that stuff. I saw this comment from Steven and it resonated with me. So he says, me, personally, I hope that every fan in the world will accept the fact that there is no GOAT, but there are GOATs, plural. I mean, as a Novak fan, if Novak surpasses Roger and Rafa in slams, what I cheer for, well, at least he's honest. I think that I still wouldn't consider Novak better or the greatest from those two, especially because of the fact that Rafa and Roger made today's Djokovic and vice versa. We are truly blessed that we live in a golden era of tennis, and not just the golden era, a never-ending golden era of tennis. These three competitive monsters dominate the sport for over 15 years, and they do not have any intention to stop. That's the one takeaway from today, and people like Tsitsipas out of the draw. I think if there is a GOAT in tennis, it's definitely the big three, and there's not any room to debate otherwise. Roger, Rafa, Novak, the greatest players of all time, and I love it. I don't want a new gen. I want these giants of sports to last. As a Novak fan, I hope that this year Novak will take the AO in the U.S., Roger Wimbledon, and Rafa Roland Garros. I also hope that Novak will win the Olympics and Rafa the World Tour Finals. Rafa needs that trophy, just like Roger and Novak need the Olympics. But that's just my wishful thinking. And I think Steven has an excellent point. Of course, I want Roger to finish with 1 or 2 more majors than the rest of his competitors, Rafa and Novak. But the older I get, the more I just appreciate what those three have done. And their stories complete each other. Without Rafa, Roger's just like Serena, a champion in search, after all these years of dominating, in search of a purpose, in search of a rival. And then they've jumped in and made Margaret Court her rival, which is just freaking ridiculous. No matter how you look at it, I think that one's a loser. But Roger, he had Rafa. Roger's story is completely connected to Rafa. And then when it looked like Rafa was going to take over the sport, Novak comes along. And then Novak completes Rafa's story. And then Roger has a resurgence. And the three of them are just going back and forth. And it's just the greatest thing that we've ever seen. We don't need to fabricate any drama. We don't need to search for ghosts from tennis past to hate on. We've got it right here. We've got this great story. And I totally agree with Steven. I will be just fine if the three of them finish with the same number of slams, and they all have the Olympics, and they all have the World Tour Finals, and we all can remember the golden age of tennis that lasted for almost freaking 20 years. So be grateful that it's not Federer or Novak or Rafa who lost early, like Tsitsipas, like Grigor Dimitrov, like big baby Denis El Chapo Shapovalov. Be grateful and enjoy watching these three champions and cherish what you have here. Because never again, I don't think, we will have tennis players or any athletes like this that we can so reliably count on every single year, every single important tournament to show up and give it their best, simply for no other reason than they love the game. They love this sport, tennis. We will be back tomorrow to love the sport tennis more and catch you up on all of the latest tennis news. See ya!